very, very fast loop. The cars go away over a mile down to a long loop at the far end of the track, which we shall see in a moment. They then come back on another straight, a bit of a mile. Each straight is now halved by a chicane, which were artificial installations put in for the running of the Grand Prix here in 1970, 11 years ago. And just to slow the cars down as a result of Jim Clark's fatal accident a couple of years before that, when he went off in a Formula 2 race, went into the woods and was tragically killed. There go the cars moving away. They're in the stadium section now, which is the slow bit of the track. This is the third gear right-hand corner that they take after the start-finish line, which sends them out into the country through the forests of this southwestern Germany area. Long straight. The cars get pretty well up to full speed here. They go up into top gear. Now, of course, they're just doing their warming up lap. There's a very slight curve as they go, but that's flat out. That's not a corner for them. And they'll be trying, they're warming up. You see them weaving about to warm their tyres up as they go. The Ferraris, of course, here they are arriving at the first chicane. These chicanes are
wide open and pretty fast. They're taking at well over 100 miles an hour, probably 120
miles an hour. But they do just break up the straight and reduce the amount of slipstreaming that's available. And go further out on into the country, down the straight, and they come to the big fast loop that you see the dot where the leader is now. This corner at the end of the straight is very, very nearly flat out, taken in top gear, and they've reached something like 180 miles an hour plus going into it. They'll take it probably at 170, and then back the other way, still in top gear, disappearing down that other straight, and at the far end of the straight you can see they're in fact going to turn left into the other chicane. There goes the Renault, just approaching the second chicane on the course. The Ferraris may be an interesting joker in the pack in that on the first lap they've proved that they get off the line pretty well for a turbocharged car, and they've got this extra power, and I wouldn't be at all surprised to see them storming past the Williamses that are in front of them up the first straight, and then of course they're going to prove a big problem to repass if they can do that. They qualified reasonably well, but their chassis is still not that good, and therefore, whoever they get in front of, it tends to be a problem for them. Here they're coming down into the stadium section now. They've come all the way down the final straight. They break down into third gear here, turning right into the stadium. Short little straight, we shall see as we follow one of the Ligiers round there. And then they come down to a second gear hairpin, probably the slowest corner on the circuit. They're now, you see the wonderful grandstands in the background, absolutely full, 100,000 people. And the people in these grandstand seats can see the whole of the stadium section, which is a marvellous spectacle for the cars. They lose them as they go out into the country, but they can, as I say, see all the important bit of the track, really. Leader coming around now on the slow right-hander, little double right-hander, and then there comes the Renault into the final corner, onto the start-finish line, where he will draw up onto the grid. As usual, the cars will form up on the grid into their positions. When they're all in position and not before, the starter will apply the red light, and then it's a minimum of 6 seconds, a maximum of 10, before he throws it to green, and away they go.
24 drivers from 14 countries, 5 types of engine, 4 types of tyre, the 2 Renaults of Prost and Arnoux on the front row, Reutemann and Jones on the second row, Pironi and Piquet on the third row. 45 laps of the 4.2-mile circuit, 189.9 miles to go as we await that red light to be followed by the green, and then the dash out of this motordrome into the countryside. All the engines working, waiting for that light. There's a yellow light there as well in case anything goes wrong for the first time ever at a Grand Prix, just to avoid what we saw happen at Belgium. Seems to be holding them a long time. Everybody in position. Safety cars behind. Can the Renaults pull away? And it's 15 Prost who does it, followed by number 2 Carlos Reutemann, the World Championship leader. 45 laps to go, and one of the Renaults pulling that enormous weight, something like 46 gallons of fuel as opposed to 38, in the lead. Alain Prost, followed by Reutemann. The Ferrari of Pironi is sneaking through as they come up to the first chicane. 125 miles an hour, third gear, and one of the Renaults clear. Prost clear, the man who thought he'd win the British Grand Prix, followed by Reutemann, followed by Pironi, followed by René Arnoux. everybody away cleanly, we can see in front of us, as they swoop down to one of the fastest curves in motor racing, the fifth gear, 150-mile-an-hour Ost curve, out in the forest, and the crowds all the way around the circuit.
Well, a good clean start, no problems at all, everybody away. The Renault's predictably a little bit slow off the line, and the Ferraris, just as I suggested earlier, have indeed come up and made their mark. Pironi's come storming through into third place. There goes the Renault. Reutemann going through the chicane. Pironi in third place. And Villeneuve, you see up there, in with the pack a bit, and if he can get a good run down the straight, he'll be moving up. He was having an attack coming up the first straight, but looked to be a little bit boxed in. The field still all clear.
Coming round to the stadium for the first time, a huge roar from the crowd, seeing the Renaults have managed to pull away. But Prost has got behind him Carlos Reutemann, the World Championship leader, Didier Pironi. Behind Pironi, Alan Jones, the World Champion. And Arnoux has vanished to the back of the pack. Something has happened to René Arnoux already, and though Prost is leading as we come up to the end of the first lap, with Alan Prost leading from Carlos Reutemann, leading from Didier Pironi, René Arnoux has dropped to the back of the pack, and the order is Prost, Reutemann, Pironi, Jones, Lafitte, as René Arnoux, sadly, after only 4.2 miles, makes his way into the pit. James Hunt.
Yes, great shame to lose René Arnoux so early. Don't know what the problem is. Let's have a look and see if we can just work out what they're going to do to his car. The mechanics descending upon it. They're doing a tyre change, which is routine in a pit stop, and they will deal with whatever other problem that he has. He didn't appear to have a puncture or anything, but they don't appear at the same time to be doing anything else to his car. Well, that must remain a little bit of a mystery for the moment.
Quite amazing, James, because the Renault that was in trouble this morning was the Prost Renault that had trouble with its turbos. Arnoux back out, and one of the Ferraris is pulling off. And now it's Didier Pironi, who was lying in third place. So two of the turbo-powered cars who were expected to do so well in this German Grand Prix are out of the hunt already, as Alain Prost leads from Carlos Reutemann, and that will mean that Alan Jones, the world champion, should be third. And so drama in the very first 5 miles of the German Grand Prix. 189.9 miles to go, and yet already two of the favourites out of this race, and everything down to young Alain Prost, the man who was once a McLaren driver, James.
Yes, Alan Jones will be very, very relieved to see Villeneuve as a Pironi out of his way in the Ferrari, because he was already losing ground to his teammate Reutemann and to Prost in the lead. And there's Jacques Lafitte, who's come storming through the field from a relatively mediocre grid position. He took Pironi and saved him on the first lap, and he's having a bit of a stormy race, but Piquet is right behind him and probably attacking him again.
Yes, James, the end of lap 2, and it's Prost, Reutemann, Jones, Lafitte, and Piquet. And John Watson moving quietly up the field. And Piquet about to take Lafitte. Piquet, showing no sign of injury, has passed Lafitte, and Piquet will now be in fourth position. So the first three men in the championship, Reutemann, Jones and Piquet, are all in the first four, as we see Nelson Piquet swing the Brabham around the chicane, going away from the Talbot Ligier of Jacques Lafitte, chasing after the two men who are his greatest championship rivals, the two men from the Tag Williams team in the Saudia Leylands, Alan Jones and Carlos Reutemann. But still, as you see in that picture, Alain Prost in the Turbo Renault, the man carrying an enormous fuel load, nearly 10 gallons more, because 4/5 of this circuit, believe it or not, is flat out. One of the hardest, hottest circuits in motor racing, but Alain Prost revelling in it as he sweeps into the second chicane, and Reutemann Jones, I am sure, James, will be content to sit there and wait for a few minutes to see what happens to the second Renault.
Yes, Jones has already, apparently, he appears to be hauling them in a bit. I think he's moved up since he got a clear run when the Ferrari went out. But, of course, the problem for both Williams drivers is going to be what to do about Alain Prost, because the Renault is quicker down the straight, has more power. It's the old problem that we mention every weekend now, it seems, or every other weekend. There is Didier Pironi walking back from his abandoned Ferrari. It looked a bit smoky and nasty when he stopped. He'll be very disappointed.
And so they come round the Autodrome to the end of the third lap. Just over 12 miles gone. And it's Prost, Reutemann, Jones, Piquet, Lafitte, Villeneuve. And John Watson is lying in 8th position, as Carlos Reutemann certainly seems to be closing on Alain Prost as they sweep down this fast back straight. John Watson has dropped back in that lap, back into 12th position. Pironi out already, Arnoux at the back of the field, but this man, Alain Prost, seemingly smoothly ahead, full load of fuel, past that strict variety. What a strange position for a car to be in on the track, followed by the two Saudi Leylands of Carlos Reutemann and Alan Jones, with Piquet having pulled ahead of Jacques Lafitte and Gilles Villeneuve in 6th position. So the 4th lap of this 45-lap German Grand Prix, and as we learnt at Silverstone, anything can happen. Will this be a race of attrition? It's a very, very hot day indeed, very humid, doesn't always suit the turbos, but at the moment, no problems at all for Alain Prost.
Interesting fact, the drivers were all complaining about how bumpy the surface is in the chicanes. The cars are run with very, very stiff suspension these days to keep them close to the ground so that they can get as much suction effect in view of the fact that they can no longer have their sliding skirts. They want to be close to the ground, and the bumps in the chicane is giving the drivers real difficulties. They're so bumpy they can hardly see it, shaking their eyeballs about in their head, and you sometimes get so much vibration you can get blurred vision from that. That looks like Jacques Lafitte to me. I can't quite see the number on it. Yes, that's Jacques Lafitte's car. He's chasing Nelson Piquet, but after getting past him on the first lap, Piquet seems to have established himself. There goes the leader, Alain Prost, with Reutemann and Jones has now caught right up to his teammate, Carlos Reutemann. Now this presents an interesting spectacle from the point of view of team tactics. Carlos Reutemann is leading the World Championship by some 17 points, but he is still officially the number 2 driver in the team, and I spoke to one or two of the team members this morning, and although he's still officially number 2 driver and therefore should let Alan Jones pass in the event that Jones is in position to come past, it's a problem. Somebody going into the pits there, I can't quite see who it is. It's Salazar into the pits in the ensign. As I was saying about and there is Jones having a go at his teammate Carlos Reutemann. They're not allowed to fight each other, and he's got through into second place. Alan Jones, who's been so unlucky this year, he's driven really well, very aggressively. He made an unfortunate mistake in the Spanish Grand Prix, which was blotted his copybook a bit there, but otherwise he's been afflicted by very bad luck all the season. Let's hope his car can hold together today, and he's now in position to set about the unenviable task of catching and then with more difficulty getting past Alain Prost's Renault. There's Nelson Piquet, who's at the back of this 4-car bunch. There are the 4 cars, and Alan Jones is right behind Prost, but he just hasn't got the power to even attack him. If he's going to have a go, can he do it into the chicane? He's getting alongside, but he hasn't got the power. I think if he's going to pass Prost, he's going to have to do some sort of big do-or-die effort in the stadium when he can get really close. But I don't envy him the problem. So it's a 4-car race. We've got the 3 World Championship leaders up there in the bunch, and today's race I think will be very, very critical as a pointer to which way the championship is going. Piquet or Jones is going to have to get a jolly good score today. Whoops! Oh! And Alain Prost, I don't think, saw Jones moving over behind him then, and he's now trying to block the inside line, and he's driving a little bit naughtily by weaving on the straight. That is not what's considered to be acceptable practice, but he was moving over to the left to protect his inside line. Now this is where Jones has got to get really close to him. I don't think he'll be able to take him into the stadium, but he may be able to outbrake him into one of the tight corners in the stadium. He's having a go on the entry, but he's not close enough.
7 then, and Alan Jones deciding not to wait to see if the turbo breaks up, to take him as he comes into this autodrome, knowing that he's got heavy load there, knowing that if that car gets a big lead and it gets lighter, he'll have to move heaven and earth to pass him. But Jones really pressing this young man. Drove a season for McLaren last year, Alain Prost. Won, of course, the French Grand Prix, the stock one. But at the end of lap 8, Alain Prost, pressured all the way by the world champion, the man who won here 2 years ago, leads the race from Alan Jones, followed by Reutemann, followed by Piquet, followed by Lafitte and Tambay. John Watson is 16th, and Britain's Nigel Mansell is 15th, as Arnoux is weaving everywhere as Jones gets in. James, this really is some strange driving, isn't it?
Yes, well, it's all right so long as Prost has got some clear air in front of him, which he did in fact have there. He's just sort of making Alan follow his line, trying to throw the toe, but it doesn't really work, because obviously if he can drive in a weave, fasten up the track, so can the guys following him, because of course Jones obviously wants to sit in his draft, in his slipstream, to take the air, to take the hole in the air made by Prost's car, which will give him some more speed, but of course not enough still to stay with the superior power of the turbocharged Renault. Jones closing up again round the long fast sweep at the end of the straight. He's moving out to have a look, but I just don't think he's getting closer. But he is very close this time, but it'll have to be a superhuman effort. No, still not close enough. Prost is controlling everything pretty well from the front. He's keeping it reasonably cool, and Jones this time is certainly not close enough to attack.
I gather in that excitement we called Alain Prost Arnoux by mistake. Apologies to Alain Prost, who in his second full year of Formula One racing is holding off not only the world champion but the world championship leader. The V6 Renault Turbo, at least 530 horsepower, some people would say 550. The man who had to choose between being a soccer player and a racing driver, and perhaps at this moment Alan Jones wished he decided to play football. Into the autodrome at the end of lap 8. Alain Prost still holding off Alan Jones, but you can see how close, and you can see how almost ragged Alan Jones was there, how hard he was trying. Less than a second in between them, James.
That's right, and keep an eye on this battle behind, because Nelson Piquet is now on Reutemann's tail and is beginning to look a bit menacing behind him, and the Brabham is probably the quickest Ford engine car, or the aerodynamics of it is the quickest car on the straight, and he will be trying to get a bit of a draft from Reutemann and slip out into the chicane, and I wouldn't be surprised. No, he's not close enough this time, but he'll be trying to get right under Reutemann's wing, out of the corners, onto one of these fast straights, then he get a toe. He's closer now, but no, he didn't get out of that chicane absolutely spot on. Prost still pulling away on every straight, giving Jones a lot of problems. Jones is attacking hard at the moment. I suspect he'll try for another couple of laps maybe, and then he may just give it a rest for a little while, because when you're driving this close to another car, it requires a superhuman effort, and it's very difficult to drive the whole length of a Grand Prix trying so hard. Jones is pulling out again, but I just don't think he's going to be close enough. No, he has to tuck back in. He's got a big problem on his hands. He's in that awful position where he can nearly do it each time, so it's not a hopeless case, but there's no way you can keep this sort of pressure up. He may have to take a breather in a little while and try and see if Prost's car will break. It's very warm and humid here at Hockenheim, which in the normal way is a disadvantage relatively to the turbocharged cars. Their reliability tends to become more suspect when it's hot, and the humidity probably won't help. And Piquet has got through. Piquet has passed Carlos Reutemann into third place.
Yes, the end of lap 9, and Piquet has passed Carlos Reutemann, so Alan Jones is now going have to move, as we see Prost, followed by Jones, followed by Piquet, followed by Carlos Reutemann. And these four men have set such a pace that they've cleared away from everyone else. Lafitte and Tambay still not in sight. Villeneuve 7th, Rebac 8th, Petresi 9th, and Andretti 10th. Lafitte in the Talbot Ligier, lying 5th, but a long way, as you can see, from this battle. Alain Prost, Alan Jones, Nelson Piquet and Carlos Reutemann. Alain Prost in only his 19th race. Alan Jones in his 91st. Jones looking for his 12th victory, and Jones knowing that if he's going to keep the championship, the let's face it, he's now 19 points behind Carlos Reutemann. He has to start a victory sequence here in Germany. But I was at the Williams factory earlier this week, and Frank Williams himself said he feels that Alan is ready to come out of the box. But at the moment, he's got to get away from the gearbox of that Renault to get past Prost somehow. He can sit there, he can hope he can pressure him into a mistake. But of course, all the time, Nelson Piquet in the Brabham is closing. And that Brabham, the first car to have the rising rate suspension, one of the best designs on the circuit, going extremely well, and Jones cannot afford to sit there too much longer.
Jones having another little look, but again, it's a little bit of a hopeless case, but he's nice and close in the stadium now, and he's having a go, and has he done it? Alan Jones is inside Prost, and I think he's got it. He's got the inside line. Oh, they're actually neck and neck, and the power. Oh, marvellous stuff, side by side round the hairpin. Prost got the power down better. Jones was very good. He didn't lean on him. Neither driver, of course, can possibly afford to touch each other. They'll be very careful of that at this stage of the Grand Prix, but that was marvellous stuff. But it has brought Nelson Piquet right up to join them. Now, if I was in Carlos Reutemann's shoes, I'd be pretty happy with the situation. Although he's been elbowed to the back of the bunch, he's got all his main contenders in his sight, just in front of him. He knows exactly what's going on, and he'd be quite happy to see manoeuvres like side by side round the hairpin going on, and probably hoping that they'll touch and move him up a couple of places by default. But he'll be waiting. He's reached the position he's in this year by running steadily and reliably, and if he can do that for the rest of the year, he's going to be a hard man to beat in the World Championship.
And so, with nearly a quarter of the race gone, a superb battle between three of the great drivers of this season, men who've all won a Grand Prix. Alain Prost, who won in France. Piquet, of course, whom we saw win in the Argentine and again in Italy. And Alan Jones, who won the first race at Long Beach, chased by Carlos Reutemann, the man leading the championship after his wins in Brazil and Belgium. These are contenders. This is a battle. And once again, Prost manages to pull away, not only pulling away from Alan Jones, but pushing Jones further into the clutches of Nelson Piquet. And really, we could be seeing, James, the battle that decides the championship.
Yes, I think so. This is certainly the absolutely critical time to see which way the championship's going. Car coming to the pits with a flat front tire, and he's got stuck on this stake mode. That was Derek Daly, the Irish driver. He had a flat tire. I don't think he'll be able to, may not even be able to get it to the pits. So Alan Jones now is in a very unfortunate situation because he really wants to concentrate on the man in front of him, Alain Prost, to get past him. But he's now got Piquet sufficiently close to him that he's got to look in his mirrors as well. So he's now got to drive with four eyes, two looking forward and two looking back, and that makes life very difficult indeed, because any aggressive passing manoeuvre that doesn't come off is liable to slow him down and let Piquet sweep through into his second place. So it's a much more difficult problem to drive, to try and overtake somebody when you've also got to protect your rear.
34 laps to go, and these are the three men who are making this race. Prost, Jones and Piquet, with Reutemann lurking. I talked to Gilles Villeneuve, the Ferrari driver, just before the start of this race, and he said whoever wins it, Reutemann will get points. I'm sure that Reutemann's sitting there, knowing that the 11 best races count this season, he'll be happy just to pick up points and add to that total. But these three men are all looking for outright victory. You're watching the BBC coverage at Silverstone. You'd have seen Alain Prost say that he thought his defeat there cost him the championship. He's certainly showing all the determination you could expect from the 26-year-old here as Alan Jones again goes up on his right-hand side. Tries to pass. Is he going to leave a way through for Piquet? No, he shuts that door on Piquet. Reutemann still again. Jones again trying to get past. He's tried one side. He's tried the other side. Prost must have mirrors full of Alan Jones in that familiar white helmet. Jones driving as aggressively as I've ever seen him drive. Bitterly disappointed about what happened when he was in the British Grand Prix, when he couldn't help but hit Villeneuve, really trying to get past, and all the time in his mirrors he's got Piquet as he comes out of the chicane, chopped off there by Alain Prost. Couldn't get through, but he's trying every inch of the way, James Hunt.
Yes, I think it's a shame that he tried to pass at the end of the straight there going to that corner. I think he would have stood a much better chance to keep tucked in, get through that one really quickly, and have another go at the same place where he got alongside into the hairpin a lap or two ago. He's certainly trying everything. As Barry rightly says, he's driving at the peak of his aggression. He's driving, if anything, has matured since he's been world champion. He's been unlucky to not to do better this year on points. He's had everything's gone wrong for him, mostly through no fault of his own. But he's driving with great aggression and panache. But no, safety through. Alan Prost, with the extra power, doesn't really have a problem because he's able to go past him on the straight. And Shearer pulls out of the way to let the PK Reutemann battle go through. PK goes with him, just that's purely to pick up the slipstream, which of course makes his car just that little bit quicker down the straight.
Really, at the end of the chicane, it's like a horsepower chariot race with Alan Jones doing his best to do a Boadicea or a Ben Hur and get ahead of that Prost. And the good news for the British listeners is that Nigel Mansell is out of the pits again as Jones still nibbles away there as they come into the Motortrome, and Mansell is back out and is in 19th position. And so, coming up to the end of the 14th lap, as Alain Prost, who has held this lead since a very wobbly start off the line, passes underneath the country position, and it is Prost, Jones, Piquet, Reutemann, Lafitte and Rybak, followed by Tambay, Patrese, Cheever and Mario Andretti. John Watson has moved up to 14th position. Into that first chicane, dropping down into third gear, 125 miles an hour according to Alan Jones's little chart, which I must tell you, Eliseo Salazar was having a look at over my shoulder today. Up into fourth and to 140 miles an hour, accelerating into fifth to go around the Ulst curve at something like 160 miles an hour. One driver described this corner to me as being swung round like a conker on a piece of string. Tremendous G-force there, as they then swoop down in fifth gear to the next chicane. And so, after 15 rounds, Alain Prost just leading from Alan Jones in the Sadia Leyland. Nelson Piquet third, Carlos Reutemann fourth, Jacques Lafitte fifth, and Hector Rybak in the other Brabham sixth. Lap 15 of the 45-lap race, a third of the race nearly completed, and for most of it, Alain Prost, the young Frenchman, has had to see Alan Jones, one of the hardest chargers in the business, sitting there on his exhaust. And Jones has got Carlos Reutemann behind him in third place. Reutemann, who has taken Piquet, and so now it is Renault, Sadia Leyland, Brabham. And suddenly Jones, the world champion, has his teammate, the world championship leader behind him. Piquet, something has happened to Piquet. What do you think happened there, James?
Well, I didn't see anything. I suspect that Piquet maybe made a little slip in a corner and just slowed himself down and Reutemann went past, because Piquet's pretty fast on the straight normally. And I should think Alan Jones will be quite relieved. I think he would prefer to see Carlos Reutemann in his immediate mirrors than Nelson Piquet, because the Brabham is a pretty quick car in the straight line, and if he ever got into a good slingshot sort of toe position behind him, he might well come past. Jones still climbing all over the back of the Renault, all over him like a rash he is, but to no avail with that extra power. Oh, and they're diving about all over the place, but the trouble is there's always a couple of lengths of clear air between the cars, and that is no position from which to attack, particularly into these very, very fast chicanes where they have such a short braking distance.
Renault, who had the first tire change during the race, already destroyed his tires when he went over the curve. Preparing rain tires, because it started a little bit of rain. Renault, die den ersten Reifenwechsel heute hatten mit Renault Hünder über die Streckenbegrenzung hinausfuhren in der ersten Runde. Sie haben einen eventuellen Reifenwechsel und haben die Regenreifen geliehen, um vorbereitet zu sein, gerüstet zu sein.
Well, Harold, German sports car driver who's helping us in both English and German in the pit, saying that there are spots of rain, and what a tragedy it would be if rain broke up this tremendous battle between young Alain Prost, the world champion Alan Jones in second place, and Carlos Reutemann, of course, the man with more Grand Prix than anyone else, sitting nursing that third place ahead of Piquet.
Yes, it would be rather ironical, wouldn't it, Barry? Most of the time we're praying, racing gets a little bit processional, we pray for rain to liven them up, to give them a bit of spark, and today we've got an absolute humdinger of a motor race. 4 cars, 3 of them the top men in the World Championship table, all battling away for the lead, and if we get rain, of course, particularly if it comes down hard, they're liable to stop the race and restart again when everybody's fitted out onto wet tyres. I don't think these pits are big enough to handle the whole field coming in together. Too dangerous when they all come in and change tyres, which is why they stop races should those conditions prevail. But Harold said it was spotting the rain. I'm looking carefully at the track. I can't see anything wet. Jones still battling away, but still that couple of lengths of clear air between them, and it's just not on. He's got to get a good run now through the chicane, down to the stadium, get close to Prost as they break to the stadium. The corner that is in the very foreground of your picture now, he doesn't want to pass here. He wants to get really close to him here and then try and outbrake him. He's not really close enough unless he gets a good run through this corner, then try and outbrake him into this left-hand hairpin that they're approaching now. Not close enough this time. Reutemann getting very close, right back in contention there, but I don't think he'll be making any particularly ferocious attempt.
Coming up then to complete 17 laps, and Alain Prost still holding on to that tenuous turbo lead from Alan Jones in second place, Carlos Reutemann third, Nelson Piquet fourth, Jacques Lafitte fifth, Rebac sixth, followed by Tambay, Patrese, Shiva and De Angelis, Mario Andretti's 11th and Jarier 12th, and John Watson has now moved up to 13th place, and Nigel Mansell is, according to my reckoning, 21st. And I think we should say, James, that in 5th position behind this big quartet is the man who won the race last year, Jacques Lafitte in the Talbot Ligier.
Yes, Jacques certainly was going like a real tiger on the first lap, but his car just hasn't quite got the legs to stay with the leading group. But he's a great driver, Jacques. He's a very good driver. He's a really tough little man. It's very hard work to drive these Grand Prix cars these days. And one thing is that Jacques, despite his diminutive size, all wiry little muscles, he never gets tired, and he's always hanging in there. But as I say, he's basically racing the Division 2 cars and leading them quite comfortably and holding them off. Here we go back to the leading battle. Alan Jones once again doing his little pulling out trick, but and Alain Prost weaving a bit down the straight, but still it's not close enough. Now let's see if Alan Jones gets a good run through there. He can get right. What he wants to do is to get right up Prost's exhaust pipe as they come out of this right-hand corner that they're heading down to now. He's quite close this time. Still not quite close enough to swing through there really well. And of course, one of the problems is that as the race goes on, things may get worse for Jones as far as passing Prost's car, because the turbocharged cars do have a bit, because of their extra power, they also use quite a considerably larger quantity of fuel. Therefore, they start with their cars a great deal heavier. But as the race goes on, this thing is evened out because they're drinking it at a faster rate, and therefore they get relatively lighter. So the acceleration of the car relative to the Ford engine car of Alan Jones and the others goes up, which improves improves the performance, just makes the problem even worse for the people who are trying to get past him.
Still leads from the two Sadia Leyland, the Tag Williams team drivers of Jones and Reutemann, the world champion and the man who wants to win the world championship. Carlos Reutemann now 39 with a 17-point lead. James.
No, just noticing they do seem to be dropping Piquet a little bit now. Piquet is there, goes Piquet, but that shot is a little bit foreshortened, and he's a little bit further behind than he looks. It's nothing significant, but he's Oh, well, he's 3.6 seconds behind there, you see on the caption. And in view of the fact that the two Williamses are probably not going as fast as they could because they're a bit held up through the twisty sections by Prost Renault. That was, incidentally, René Arnoux just in front of Prost there, who, if you remember, has been into the pit, lost some time, and they're slowly gaining on him to lap him, and so he will go a lap down as and when they catch and pass him. He may do, I don't suppose he can be of much help to his teammate Alain Prost. His job when they catch him was to keep well out of the way and make sure that he doesn't give the two Williamses a chance to gobble up Prost Renault by making a mess of things.
Well, you see how close they are there. I just got my watch on it as we complete 20 laps of this race, and there's only half a second in it. Half a second between Prost and Jones, and there isn't even half a second in it between Jones and Reutemann. But Reutemann has got nearly a 4-second lead over Nelson Piquet as the back mark. Now that is René Arnoux ahead of his teammate, and Alan Jones almost then got past Alain Prost because of where René Arnoux was on the track, James.
Yes, well, Prost was again doing his moving about across the track trick, and he nearly let Alan Jones pick up what toe that René Arnoux was leading. Of course, that just don't get nearly so much effect. But Prost certainly wants to sit right behind the line that Arnoux's car is taking, not only to benefit from the toe for himself, but also to make sure Jones doesn't pick it up and feel the benefit for him.
Well, just in case you get confused, as we look at Nelson Piquet, who's dropping back, the yellow car you see in front is car number 16 of René Arnoux, who's in 16th position, followed by his teammate Alain Prost, 15, who is first, and of Alan Jones, number 1, who is second, Carlos Reutemann, number 2, who is third, and Nelson Piquet, number 5, who is fourth.
I think things could be developing here. I don't know whether Arnoux plans to get out of the way and let them go into the stadium on their own, but he's going to give Jones a chance if he holds Prost up at all. Jones is nice and close now. Can Jones stay close enough to have a swing into this hairpin here? No, he can't. But yes, he can. And Alan Jones has got through. Alan Jones takes the lead on the right part of the circuit. He's now got the stadium section left to pull away enough of a lead. He needs enough of a lead, which he seems to have got already. He's pulled away already 20, 30 yards. He may need a little bit more to get by. Yes, but Reutemann has moved past one of the Renaults. I can't see which one, but all I can say is here we have a little replay. It was messed by his own teammate, and how ironic and very, very sad for Alain Prost. I think René Arnoux really should have let them through on the straight, slowed down, because he could only cause risks and problems by joining in with their little battle through the stadium. And Alan Jones now has a big enough lead, and Alan Jones is off and away, and no one is going to catch him, or at least not... the Renaults aren't going to catch him. It's now up to Carlos Reutemann to find a way past Alain Prost and try and get through. So Alan Jones now clearly established vastly superior speed. You see the huge lead is already opened out, and of course now Reutemann's going to start panicking as he sees Jones disappear into the distance. But of course, championship position-wise, he only has to finish close behind Jones. Jones has all the work to do to catch him.
Well, that really was quite amazing. That four-man car number 15, Alain Prost, who found himself in a tangle with his teammate René Arnoux, who in all his 40 races with Renault can surely not have made a mistake quite as crucial as that one. He really did, as James Hunt has explained, seem to open the gate for Alan Jones to get through. And although Alain Prost is managing now to hold Reutemann at bay, Alan Jones looks as if he could be heading for 9 points. And just as Frank Williams forecast earlier this week, the German Grand Prix is the race where Jones first won a race here for Williams. He went on to win 4 in a row. There is no way that Alan Jones has surrendered the World Championship. He may be 19 points behind his teammate Carlos Reutemann, but he leads the way into the Motordrome. There you see Arnoux and Reutemann with 22 laps completed. Alan Jones has already built up a 1.6 second lead over Alain Prost. There you see him in the picture. Jones, followed by Prost, followed by Reutemann. Nelson Piquet has closed up during that little drama. Jacques Lafitte, last year's winner, is 5th. And Hector Rivac in the second Brabham is 6th. We can see that John Watson is still 13th. Nigel Mansell is 22nd. Derek Daly, despite his excursion, is 21st. But a remarkable overtaking manoeuvre on that lap. Alan Jones in the lead, followed, as you can see there, by Alain Prost, followed by Carlos Reutemann. And Renault, who have had a front row qualification here for 3 years, never finished a car here, at least have a car second, but anything can happen now. And Alain Prost, the man who was so unlucky at Silverstone, must be feeling very fed up with his teammate indeed, James.
Yes, I'm afraid so. That was unintelligent driving by René Arnoux. I think I said as they came down the straight before that Arnoux should get out of the way and let them go through, let Prost get on with the job that he was doing fine when he was doing it without any help from his teammate or anybody else. And as soon as he got a bit of help from his teammate, that was sadly for him the end of the job he was doing. I should think there'll be some pretty angry people in the Renault pit. And I would think there'll be one pretty angry man out there on the track, possibly two, because I'm sure Arnoux is very angry with himself as well, because he must realise the little disaster that he's perpetrated. I wouldn't be surprised if we see a new fastest lap flashed up pretty soon, because Jones is really streaking away, and I'm sure now that he's got a clear track in front of him, he's going to be lapping a fair bit quicker.
Piquet 29 and Lafitte and Villeneuve 23. And James Hunt was the man who heard funny noises at Silverstone, but there are no funny noises in the leading cars at the moment, James.
No, they all sound quite healthy, and Reutemann is certainly very healthy and full of beans in his car, because he's now resorted to psychological tactics with Alain Prost, who's definitely holding him up, but quite legitimately, and is wanting to keep in second place. Reutemann is waving his fist fairly frantically at Prost, telling him he wants to come through, but I don't think Prost is going to bow to that sort of bludgeoning, and will probably just harden his resolve to keep Reutemann at bay behind him. He's probably, as I say, still rankling over his unfortunate error by his teammate, and gets him. There goes Prost, swinging through the right-hander into the stadium. Reutemann not close enough to have a go, certainly. We haven't quite got him in shot. He's close enough that you've got to just about get alongside before you can have a go under braking. But of course, closed up the stadium, and of course, what's probably bothering Carlos Reutemann, something fell off one of the back markers cars, and Alan Jones could easily have got that in the face. It bounced off his front tire. I don't know whether you saw that little bit. It looked like they have a little strip on the rear wing. A little bit of aluminium, but of course that hits you full in the face lengthways on. That can do you a very serious injury, could even kill somebody. It's not a good idea to have racing cars running on the track with bits falling off them, but obviously it wasn't intended. And that is that René Arnoux. That is René Arnoux now on his own, out of the way of the leading bunch, and just soldiering on, hoping to pick up places probably through attrition rather than anything else, so he can finish in the frame somewhere.
We're having a look at some of the back markers there. Siegfried Stohr, the young psychologist from Rome, German name, Italian driver, just scraped in at the back of the grid. We haven't told you that neither of the Tolmans qualified. There's Stohr just ahead of Jones. Both the Tolmans failed to qualify. Brian Henson had an engine blow up in the final practice. Neither of the Fittipaldis qualified. Gabbiani didn't qualify, but Charrier did very well in the Osella. And this man, Siegfried Stohr, who Jones is just sweeping by now, be glad to get past him into the chicane. Stohr was the 24th in the Arrows. Riccardo Patrese, of course, the Arrows team leader, been the subject of much speculation here this weekend. There are rumours that Andretti might go back to American racing next year, and Patrese is being courted very strongly by Alfa Romeo. But at the moment, Patrese, who is lying 8th in the Arrows, I should think will be very happy to be with the Arrows team, as Andretti is 11th. There's the famous ABBA symbol. We said Tommy Borgood, the drummer, the man we saw finish 6th at Silverstone, being cheered on by his colleagues from ABBA at the moment. 19 13 laps to go of this 45-lap race, and the order is still Alan Jones, number 1 in your picture. Alan Jones first in the Saudia Leyland. Alan Prost second in your picture. Now the second yellow car in the Renault. Third with Nelson Piquet right on his exhaust now, and Piquet coming to take Carlos Reutemann. Piquet, who dropped back, trying to take Reutemann, he swept through on the inside. Piquet has done it. Is there something wrong with Reutemann's car? That could certainly affect the championship. Nelson Piquet is second in the championship at the moment behind Reutemann. Now leads him on the road. And the order, Alan Jones, Alan Prost, now Nelson Piquet in the Brabham, leading Carlos Reutemann, James.
Well, that's sort of good news and bad news for Alan Jones, really, because if conditions stay at the end, it takes a couple of points away from Carlos Reutemann. On the other hand, it gives that extra couple of points to Nelson Piquet. And Jones, of course, lying third in the championship. They're both ahead of him, so he probably... In fact, I think he probably see the points removed from Reutemann more than he minds Piquet getting points at the moment. But as we've said already a couple of times in this race, an absolutely critical stage in the championship. And Reutemann still... Well, now stop waving with Mr. Frost. That's the back marker that Nelson Piquet is trying to pass. Yes, he's given him room. He's spotted him at the last minute. Piquet's through. It's possibly a slightly fraught moment, and Reutemann will be wanting to get round the outside of him there.
It was funny, just before that manoeuvre by Piquet, Reutemann was shaking his fist at Prost. Probably he was paying too much attention to the car in front, and perhaps not enough to Piquet behind. Piquet certainly slowed at one point in the race. Could have been the tyres on off, and there you see Alan Jones with a 7-second lead over Alan Prost. Prost has got quite a lead now over Nelson Piquet in Prost's 9-second lead. And Reutemann is really dropping back now. So there you see that Alan Jones being chased still by Prost, but Piquet, his very serious rival, Piquet who really fought him for the World Championship last year, moving up, and I'm sure we're going to see Piquet challenging Prost very shortly now.
Yes, I think Piquet probably stands more chance of dealing with Prost than Reutemann did, because I think Piquet's car, that Brabham, is a little bit quicker down the straight than the Williams. But Reutemann seems to be slowing down. He may just be taking a breather. Remember, it's very hot here, very hard work in the cockpit. The cars with their very hard suspension, or rather almost no suspension, really batter the drivers a lot, and it's quite in order to take the odd breather, particularly if you've just been passed. But I am trying to get a good look at Reutemann's car, particularly his tyres, to see if I can see any marking up of the tyres. Because if, for example, there is anything wrong with them, then of course he's got potential problems for both Piquet and Jones. And there's Alan Jones. No, it's Reutemann. Reutemann's engine has let go. That's an engine blow-up, so that would probably explain why Reutemann slowed up a bit. It looks by the smoke as if he might have dropped a valve or something, so maybe he broke a valve spring before, which would just take a little bit of power off the engine, which would explain how he slowed a little bit.
So once again, James, you're absolutely right. Carlos Reutemann did have problems. This morning, he came in very angrily in the unofficial practice. He had an engine with a water leak. He went out in a spare car without even fastening his safety belt. He was in such a tizzy. Felt they changed the engine, of course, but Reutemann, the man who has finished 7 of the 9 Grand Prix this season, is out of the race, and that, of course, really affects the championship, because Reutemann, as every driver here forecast, looked as if he was going to get more points. That's the end of Reutemann's race. It's lap 29 of the 45-lap race, so Alan Jones is really going to close up to within 10 points of Reutemann now if he stays on the circuit.
Yes, this could be a very, very important factor in the race for the World Championship. And whilst obviously it's very bad luck on Reutemann, he's had his fair share of luck. He's finished a huge number of races in the last season and a half, and more than one would normally expect to, other than with the aid of the gods. But it's awfully bad luck on him that the luck has deserted him at such a critical time. That's Patrick Tambay's car in the pit.
It's a rear wheel bearing which seized.
Well, that was Harold Ertl telling us that Patrick Tambay, the man who left the Theodore team to drive for Talbot Ligier, has pulled in with a rear bearing problem. So this circuit is certainly taking its toll of engines. We've had, of course, the Carlos Reutemann problem. We've had now the Patrick Tambay problem. We've seen André de Cesare spin off. We've seen Daly go off once, although Daly is now lying 21st. But with 29 rounds gone, here we see Alan Jones leading. He will have had the signal from his pit that Reutemann is out. He'll say, tough on my teammate, but he'll know it's 9 points and 9 complete points to close on Carlos Reutemann. So he'll only be 10 points behind Reutemann now in the championship. And of course we've got Holland, we've got Austria, we've got Italy, we've got Montreal. And it was confirmed this weekend that the last race of the season will indeed be round the Caesars Palace car park, none other than Los Angeles. I want... John has obviously had problems. He said the car wasn't handling well here. We thought his luck had changed this morning when his car broke down in the unofficial practice. Failure which could have happened in the race, but Watson, who's been lapped by Alan Jones, is now 10th. And Nigel Mansell is 22nd, just behind Derek Daly of Ireland, who's 21st. But Alan Jones is very much the man out in front. On the 31st lap of this 45-lap race, 189 miles, the 10th round of the World Championship, 15-round championship, and Jones, who won the first round at Long Beach, crosses the line at the end of 31 laps with a 9.79 lead. Let's see if he agrees with my stopwatch. 10.3 now. Alan Jones ahead of Alan Prost, car number 15, the turbo-powered Renault, but at least the Renault is still running, and as I said earlier, this is the first time, if he completes the next 14 laps, that a Renault has succeeded in finishing here at Hockenheim. And if Alan Jones stays in that position, and if Piquet stays third, then the championship table will look like this evening. Reutemann 43 points, Jones 33, Piquet 30, Jacques Lafitte in the Talbot Ligier, who is now lying fourth, will move up to 24 points, Binder 21, and Watson will be sixth, equal with Prost, with 19 points each. John Watson in your picture now in the carbon fibre McLaren MP4. So Alan Jones lapping there, Jean-Pierre Jarier. Jarier, the man who's driven for Lotus, the man who drove for Ligier, and very well, it must be said, earlier in the season, who thought he was out of Grand Prix racing, but has been given a chance by the Italian Acela team and has come back in. And there you saw a flash of car 22, that's Mario Andretti. Andretti, who of course driven for just about everybody, including Lotus and Ferrari, now with Alfa Romeo, but it must be said that Alfa Romeo must be praying for the turbo engine, which we hear will be coming out probably at Monza. But Jones at the moment quite happy with the 500 horsepower he's got from the Ford engine, happy with the Patrick Head design Saudi Leyland, happy with the fact that he's in the lead, and I'm little signal there at one of the tyres. James, is that going to be a tyre stop?
Yes, I think Alan Jones was pointing at his left front tyre there, and he's got 13 laps to go, and that's a long way around here. The left front tyre is the outside front tyre for a right-handed track such as this. It's the tyre that takes the most strain, the most of a bashing, and that will be cause for a lot of concern for him. I'm going to try and get a good look at it as he comes past, if we can get a close-up shot of his car.
Well, he's got a 10.9-second lead over Alain Prost. But we were saying he was happy with the engine, happy with the car, but he can't be happy with that tyre situation. They changed tyres at the French Grand Prix back to the people they'd raced with last year. They've had problems, and there's another man with problems. Tommy Borgers in the ATS. The man who finished sixth at Silverstone, who gave the Avon tyre up to their first point, into the pits. Now, will he be followed very shortly on this, the 33rd lap, by Alan Jones? James Hunt watching very closely in the Autodrome as we've seen Watson going, Jones in there. James.
Yes, looking across the track, I can see some very anxious faces in the Williams pit. They're all prepared, the mechanics are ready with their air guns. But it'll be an interesting thing to see if Alan actually tries to come in. Now, let's see if we can get a look at his left front tire. Unfortunately, we're not in quite tight enough on the shot. It doesn't look too bad for me, but that might explain why Alan didn't open up a bigger lead, because when he passed Frost, he started to go away like a rocket, and then suddenly he was only edging away. The gap, he's still increasing his lead, so I would think if he can find a way, look at that left front tire, it doesn't look too bad to me, but it may just be chunking up or vibrating him on him a bit. He's pointing again at it, so maybe he's just informing the team of the problem, so they know what they've got to do in the event that he does come in. But I would think that, especially while he's still going reasonably quickly, which he is now, he will try and stay out there. But the only problem with that sort of a decision is, of course, he does take a risk of a possible blowout. Nelson Piquet, on the same make of tire, had a failure at Silverstone when he was going very well, which pitched him into the barrier and out of the race, and of course that's a potentially dangerous situation as well as losing the race if you do that. So Alan will be a very worried man.
In fact, James, Alan Jones could have been pointing at tyres because of the weather. If you look down the pit road from here, you can see, as we see, he's on an 11-second lead, that people are putting umbrellas up in the pit, and some people sitting down in front of us in the grandstand are putting umbrellas up. There could just be a speck or two of rain. We don't want to be alarmist. We certainly don't want a Dijon. James, what do you think?
Well, I think if Alan has tire problems and that is rain, then of course that will be to his advantage, because the rain will cool the track surface, that will cool the tire, it will take the strain of the friction obviously off the tire, and of course if it rains hard, although the sky certainly doesn't look as if that's likely to happen, but if it does rain decently enough to make the track properly wet, then they're liable to stop the race, and that will hand victory to Alan on a place if they've completed their 75% of the distance.
Well, in fact, they have to complete 34 laps, and this is the 34th lap. So if the race did stop, and if Alan Jones did have a problem, perhaps he'd be a very happy man, but there are certainly some umbrellas going up in the pit. Alan Jones is certainly not slowing down. He's certainly got an 11-second lead over Alan Prost. Nelson Piquet third, Jacques Lafitte fourth, Hector Ribach fifth, and Eddie Cheever sixth. Nelson Piquet fighting for second place in your picture with Alain Prost. Alan Jones out in the lead, but, and a very big but, pointing from the pit and from the officials that it could be raining out there. So if Piquet wants to get past Alain Prost and prevent the sort of thing that happened at Dijon, he's got to do it now. Since you left us, Carlos Reutemann, the man who leads the World Championship, parked sadly by the side of the road in his Saudi Leyland. Alan Jones, who you've seen overtake Prost, leads by 8 seconds of Alain Prost in your picture now in car number 15. Nelson Piquet in the Brabham is third. Jacques Lafitte is fourth. Hector Ribach in the Brabham is fifth. Eddie Cheever in the Tyrrell is sixth. And John Watson has moved up to 10th place. You're looking at John Watson in 10th place. Some specks of rain on the track. But they are not slowing this enormous battle between Alan Prost and Nelson Piquet for second place. There it is. You see the two cars almost as one. Alan Prost in car number 15, the Renault, is 8 seconds behind Alan Jones. But Nelson Piquet is just there in your picture. You can see how close his front wheel is to the gearbox. James, another superb duel.
Yes, fantastic stuff, and it's really livened up now because the track is greasy, or certainly was a lap ago, and Piquet is coming through, but he's still got a bit of a way to go. That Renault's very powerful, but I think Piquet's made it this time. Now, the situation is getting very interesting indeed, because Alan Jones, as you would expect the leader with a bit of road in hand, has taken it a bit easy, and they've closed the gap just a little bit on Jones. The track got greasy. Nelson Piquet drove very well on the greasy surface and has taken advantage of that little light showering to finally find a way around Alan Prost, and now we've got to watch see if he can pull away, and I'm sure he will do. But can he do anything about Alan Jones? Jones, we know, is in a bit of tyre trouble. He's been pointing at his left front tyre. A greasy surface should help to protect that tyre from further wear and tear, but I don't think it's raining anymore. It's very hard to tell from where we are up in the grandstand. The cars don't seem to be sliding about quite so much as they were a lap ago, and I think it was just a little flip, and maybe it'll all dry up, which of course will be very worrying for Jones if he's got a dodgy tyre.
So only 40 miles to go before the end of this 190-mile Grand Prix, and Alan Jones must be getting signals shortly that the man there in the Parmalat Brabham, Nelson Piquet of Brazil, is now in second place ahead of Alan Prost in the Renault, and no love lost between Nelson Piquet and Alan Jones. They fought each other, tremendous duel last year for the World Championship. Piquet, of course, has already won 2 races this year. Piquet won in Argentina, won again in San Marino. Jones going for his second victory as he crosses the line at the end of lap 38 with the order: first Jones, then Piquet, then Prost, then Lafitte, then Rabat, and then Cheever. And the gap between Alan Jones and Nelson Piquet, James, is only 5.2 as Piquet passes the back markers to get closer to him.
Yes, he pulled over 3 seconds on Alan Jones on that one lap. Now, is that Jones being very circumspect on the damp track with a little bit in hand if it dries out or if Piquet gets right to him? Or is Jones in real trouble, possibly with his left front tyre, as we've been suspecting from his gesticulations that he goes past his pit a few laps ago? But they are now within sight of each other. Piquet, I think, is nearly close enough for Jones to start seeing him looming in his mirrors, so at least he'll have the chance to watch. But it must be a very worried Alan Jones indeed right now.
And as they're on lap 38, it's less than a second elapsed that Nelson Piquet needs to make up to catch and pass his old rival Alan Jones. And I'm sure James will agree, catching is one thing, passing is another. But you can see they're both in the same picture as we see Prost sweep past Elio De Angelis, who, by the way, is lying 7th in the Lotus 87, no Lotus 88 here. So Alan Jones will be getting a signal every time he comes past the pit, warning him about the approach of Nelson Piquet, the Brazilian in the Brabham, who fortunately was not hurt in that big accident at Silverstone, a man who really wishes to lay claim to the championship, and it'd be marvellous if he did well here. Just Carlos Reutemann was the last man to win in Germany, and you can see that whatever the computer score says, there cannot be more than 2.5 seconds between them now, James.
Just that Piquet is now right on Jones's tail, so I have to assume that Jones is in quite serious trouble. I'm going to have a listen to the engine note. Well, I think Jones's engine sounds a bit rough. I think Jones is in engine trouble. Let's see what happens as they go up the straight. We should be able to see by how the gap alters if Jones falls back, because I think, well, he seems to be keeping up all right. That's
Slimborger going off there, but the thing that matters is that Nelson Piquet, on the 39th lap of a 45-lap race, has passed Jones, and the world champion once again seems to be in trouble here at Hockenheim. Last year... Behind Watson in 8th place is Elio De Angelis, followed by Jarier, Andretti, Villeneuve and Stewart. So Nelson Piquet, on lap 40 of this 45-lap race, in the lead, a man who seemed to be dropping jumping back when he was in 4th place. There you see the order again. Piquet, Prost, Jones, Lafitte, Reback and Cheever. The fastest lap still belongs to Alan Jones, but he needs more than a fast lap now to overtake both Piquet and Prost to regain the 9 points that seem to be his. Until, with less than 40 miles to go, everything happened at once, and he lost out not only to Piquet, but to Prost. Perhaps it's a tyre, perhaps he should have come into the pit, or perhaps it's something more serious, James. But Jones has certainly got problems and could be falling into the clutches of Jacques Lafitte.
Yeah, well, he's got over 40 seconds on Lafitte at the moment, and I think his problems, such as they might be, would have to get worse and slow him down more if he was going to be caught by Lafitte. But of course, that's always a worry. I think Jones will be happy to limp his car home. Coming around the stadium now, and I will actually, there's Alan Prost soldiering on, I will just take my cans off and have a listen to his engine to see if that's the trouble.
Well, while James listens to Nelson Piquet, we're watching Nelson Piquet and looking once again for the 4th time at our revised championship points. And if, in fact, the order stays as it is at the moment, Reutemann 43 points, Piquet would have 35, Jones 28, and Lafitte 24. James?
Well, I had listened to Alan Jones, and yesterday his engine's misfiring very badly. It sounds extremely rough, so he will now be keeping his fingers crossed that he can limp the thing to the line already. Temperature's high. If you remember, he had a fuel feed problem very near the end of the Monte Carlo Grand Prix, which was one of the, in my opinion, one of his finest drives. Drove absolutely marvellously there, and then was robbed of certain victory close to the end of the race when his fuel system was vaporizing or whatever it was doing. He wasn't getting its full dose of fuel into the inlet to the engine, and it sounds to me like that. It could of course be electrical. They sound much the same, those types of missiles, but whatever it is, I don't think Alan really cares. His main concern now will be to hang on to his 3rd place and salvage something from the wreckage, but an even stronger emotion must be of despair and disappointment after a really fine drive, and a drive that really deserved a victory. A great shame for Alan.
Well, they're on the 41st lap of the 45-lap race, and Nelson Piquet, the 28-year-old from Brazil, who, rather interesting, Nelson Piquet had to choose motor racing instead of tennis. Alain Prost, in your picture now, chose motor racing instead of soccer, and Alan Jones, sitting in 3rd place, must wish that both of them had chosen the other sport. Cruel luck for Alan Jones, but perhaps Nelson Piquet, who is 4.41 seconds, as you see on your Swiss man, Alain Prost, deserves a little bit of luck. He certainly ran out of it at the end of last season. And remember that Piquet took up a tremendous challenge when he stepped in to the Brabham seat of Lauda at Montreal in 1979. He's done 44 Grand Prix, he's had 5 victories, and he looks at the moment as if he's on his way to a 6th. He won in Long Beach, Holland and Italy last year to finish 2nd in the championship. Desperately wants to win here to help him win it this time. As I said, there's a little bit of needle between Jones and himself, but Jones is far too far behind now to do anything about it. Some half a minute behind Nelson Piquet. And with 42 laps completed, the order: Piquet, Prost, Jones, Lafitte, Reback, Cheever, Watson, De Angelis, Jarier and Andretti.
Well, I think Jones is unlikely now to make it even in 3rd place. He's off over 10 seconds on the last lap to Jacques Lafitte. Lafitte is now only 19 seconds behind him, and that really means that at the current rate of progress, Lafitte is going to gobble him up in plenty of time, and that's it's just a tragedy. I'm speechless. I know exactly how he feels. Things like this happen in Grand Prix racing, but they've happened to Alan Jones with totally unfair regularity this year, and he must be feeling just absolutely desolate. As Nelson Piquet, who's also driven a very good race, he's been a bit unlucky recently, he's had a bad run. He's looked very, very good this year, and so the last 4 or 5 Grand Prix, everything's gone wrong for him as well. And but today things look pretty good so far. He is now has only mechanical failure and his own danger of making an error between him and the checkered flag, and I don't think Piquet's going to make a mistake now. There's no danger of that. He's experienced, cool, and he'll be keeping the car on the road and keeping his fingers crossed.
42 laps completed, they're on their 43rd lap, and Piquet has a 6.41 second lead over Alain Prost. And Alan Jones, as we sadly predicted, is getting overhauled more and more by Jacques Lafitte in 4th place in the Talbot Ligier. Hector back in the Brabham is 5th, it could be a 1st and 5th for the British Brabham team, and Eddie Cheever 6th.
Well, Alan Jones now has the feet right on his tail. He's lost 20 seconds in that lap, and he's coming into the pit. Alan Jones has either given up the unequal struggle or he's come in to put fuel in. And you can see by the way his head's rocking that the car is going to burp like this, and it's absolutely disastrous. Obviously, he was probably quite lucky to limp round that last lap. I don't know what they're doing. They're probably stuffing it as much fuel as they can get into in a short space of time. No, they've actually got the engine cover off and having a look at that. But anyway, that's no points for Jones, I'm afraid.
It could, of course, mean, James, that John Watson moves up into 6th position. John Watson lying 7th at the moment. It does look as if Alan Jones is going to stay in the pit, and I certainly don't envy Harold Ertl, the German sports car driver who's trying to speak to him. I don't think Alan Jones will be in a very friendly move at the moment. Bitter disappointment. A long, long time since this team has suffered that sort of disappointment. One of the most reliable teams in motor racing. And no finishes then for the... Oh yeah, Al Jones is going out again. I apologise to Frank Williams and all the team. He's going to go back out. It'll be very interesting to see where he comes up on our computer. It certainly still seems to be misfiring, but we're on the 44th lap, the penultimate lap of this 45-lap race. And the man, Nelson Piquet, in your picture now, is not only leading the race, but certainly changing the face of this year's World Championship, as this would be his 3rd victory. So 2 laps to go, in fact only 1 3/4 for Nelson Piquet. Alain Prost in 2nd place. Jacques Lafitte moved up to 3rd place, so a good day for the French, 2nd and 3rd. Alan Jones at the moment registering 4th on the computer. Hector Ribac 5th, Eddie Cheever 6th, John Watson 7th, 1 lap behind. And I don't think that Alan Jones lost a whole lap there. As we come up to the end of the last lap but one, with Alain Prost obviously happy with his 6 points. Nelson Piquet obviously delighted with his points, and John Watson probably not going to be able to improve on his position in 7th place. A tremendously dramatic race. First, René Arnoux out in the 1st lap. Carlos Reutemann suddenly pulling up with engine failure. Alan Jones overtaking Alain Prost because of a seeming mistake by René Arnoux. Nelson Piquet starting a charge through the field, and Alan Jones sadly striking trouble with about 40 miles to go. But the result of it all is that Nelson Piquet is now leading this German Grand Prix, the 10th round of the World Championship in the Brabham, as they come to cross the line to start the last lap. According to my watch, he's got an 8.9 second lead over Alain Prost. Nelson Piquet on the last lap. What will he be thinking now, James?
Well, I think Piquet will be thinking just about getting the car. In fact, both drivers will. They're just they're not in a position to overtake one another. They're too far apart. They'll be just keeping their fingers crossed they don't run out of petrol or anything dramatic happen. It's been a little bit of a lucky race for Nelson Piquet, but he was always there, thereabouts. He was running competitively with the leaders all the time. He took advantage of their misfortune, and it's a very fair and deserved victory because, as I say, he was always up there. And it's nice to see Piquet back. He's had a bad run recently. I think he's found things rather tough going. It certainly seems that the pressure, in a way, more off the track than on speed getting to him. But this will restore his confidence, and I think it is reasonably true and fair to say that Nelson Piquet looks as if he's back. His confidence to be back, and that's a very nice thing. Terribly bad luck on Alan Jones. A fine drive by Alain Prost in a tough car to drive, because it's hard work to drive that turbo Renault round, and he'll be pretty pleased with second. The problem he had with his teammate René Arnoux, which helped Jones through into the lead, will probably be forgotten now, because I think Alain Prost will realise that when that rain came down, he was going to be swallowed up. anyway, so he'll be very, very happy with a good second place.
Nelson Piquet in the Motordrome in front of 80,000 people, 52,000 of them seated, but not at the moment. They're on their feet to cheer the victory by the 28-year-old Brabham driver. Nelson Piquet coming in to win his third Grand Prix of the season in the Brabham. The Ford-powered Parmalat Brabham with a BMW turbo up their sleeves. He comes along to take the finishing flag. You'll hear the cheer. Nelson Piquet has won the German Grand Prix. Second is this man, Alain Prost, and John Watson sitting behind him has actually finished sixth to get a World Championship point. So second, Alain Prost in the Renault. Third, this man, Jacques Lafitte in the Talbot Ligier. Fourth behind him will be yet another Brabham driver, Hector Rebac, getting his best ever result. Eddie Cheever of the USA will be fifth in the Tyrrell, and John Watson sixth in the Marlboro McLaren. And poor old Alan Jones, because of that pit stop, is one lap behind and has finished ninth. So no points today for the Tag Williams team, but 9 points for Nelson Piquet, and a changed championship, which according to my reckoning is Reutemann 43, Piquet 35, Lafitte, the man in your picture now, 25, Alan Jones 24, Gilles Villeneuve 21, Watson has moved up to 20, and Prost 19. A tremendously dramatic